Dwyane Gambino come to another reaction video. You need to try and make sure that sub and smash that notification bell. You know what I drop that shit? Yo, story of Drake being robbed 2009. Oh, I heard about the story way back. I didn't because I think I remember there's a controversy saying this was someone say Drake was a snitch and da da da. I just want to remember about the situation, and I just know that if Mans in Toronto were doing that now, Drake would not be alive to be the best rapper to ever rap. Thank God niggas back in the day have some like ethics, bro. Something. These niggas nowadays in the city don't give a fuck, bro.
So we all know Aubrey Graham, Drake, especially if you're from Toronto. It's become a household name at this point. He's one of the most well-known rappers in the world, and also one of the wealthiest. With that amount of money and fame, you attract attention from all sorts of people, and some of them have malicious intent. So as a celebrity, it's natural that you end up hiring a security team to protect you. When it comes to Drake, well, he's basically untouchable. He walks around with a squadron of top-tier meatheads who are known to be rough with people and overstep boundaries. One of his bodyguards was even the subject of a YouTube video, where someone was pointing out how terrifyingly huge this guy was. Now when Drake travels by car, it's with a convoy of black SUVs, filled with bodyguards dedicated enough to step into traffic and block cars so his entourage can merge. Basically these days, you won't catch Drake without a small army of defendants, especially in his home city. For added protection in Toronto, he's even connected with local gangs, like Reps Up and G-Way Boys, giving him not only a sense of safety within the city, but also some type of street credibility. This made Drake more comfortable in Toronto, comfortable enough to build a luxurious mega mansion in Bridles Path. But this is the current Drake. He wasn't always the sheltered, established rapper that we see today. In the early years of Drake's career, he's what you would call green behind the ears, and he didn't think that private security was needed while in his home city. This was surprising, considering he made a comment to New York Times around then, telling a reporter that he felt unsafe in Toronto at all times. His inexperience as a celebrity would eventually lead him to being robbed, and I don't mean the multi-million-dollar jewelry heist of his tour bus in 2016. That happened in Phoenix. I'm talking about the armed robbery at gunpoint that went down over a decade ago, in the city which Drake calls home. This event occurred in the evening of May 31st, 2009. Then 23-year-old Drake was having dinner at a restaurant in Toronto's Little Italy, located at the corner of College and Beatrice Street. He was on a date with a woman who was named Chantel Brown. After enjoying their meal on the night out, the two left the restaurant and walked to an SUV that was parked across the street. Drake got into his car, and moments later, two armed men suddenly approached the vehicle with guns drawn and started banging them on the window. Drake opened the door, and they then aimed their weapons at his face, demanding that he gave up his jewelry and anything else he had. Without much choices, Drake handed over his diamond gold chain, which rapper Lil Wayne had recently gifted to him, along with an expensive Audemars watch and $2,000 in US cash. The woman, Chantel, was sitting in the passenger seat at this point, but before the suspects could make their way to her, a man that was exiting the same restaurant, named Nicholas Carino, noticed the robbery and yelled at the gunman to get the F back. Apparently spooked, the two suspects quickly jumped into a nearby getaway car with the stolen goods. The car then sped southbound down Beatrice Street, but it wouldn't get too far. A short time later, the same car was stopped by police for driving the wrong way down a one-way street. Once stopped, two people jumped out of the vehicle and began running in an attempt to escape. One person still remained in the car, the driver, and he managed to speed off. After a brief foot chase with police, one of the running suspects was apprehended. The driver of the getaway car was eventually tracked down and also arrested, but the second suspect who escaped on foot was never caught and ultimately got away. The two who were caught,
Jeez, I'm not get to brag about robbing Drake in the hood.
And Socrates Cotterwell, ages unknown. They were both charged
let Drake
with
find out who you are.
Conspiracy to commit armed robbery,
Probably
3 counts of pointing a firearm, and possession of stolen property. As far as the items that were robbed from Drake, the police managed to recover the chain, the watch, and about $1,330. But they never found the guns that were allegedly used in the crime, which ended up being detrimental to the case. Now this is when some controversy begins. It's claimed that Drake himself was the one who pressed charges on the men and provided a statement to the police of exactly what happened. This rumor came to light after an online post by a fellow Toronto rapper named Big Page, who was one of the first people to call out Drake for allegedly being a snitch. Big Page actually collaborated with Drake just a few weeks.
This was the biggest fail of life. Don't know, dude, but bruh, you had Drake and I'm So Fly, and you didn't tie that bond with Drake. 2 million back in that day, bruh. That was a big fly.
A track called I'm Still Fly, which racked in over 2 million views on YouTube. So these allegations came as a surprise, since they were apparently friends.
And it wasn't even Drake's
posted a picture on his Twitter account of
song.
a court document which showed Drake's legal name.
Everyone knows that track as Drake.
As well as the names of the suspects in the case. This document was supposedly proof that Drake pressed charges against the men in relation to the armed robbery. Aside from calling him a snitch, Big Page also claims that Drake used to ask him for money loans and also asked to borrow his chain, along with a few other disrespectful tweets. But Big Page admit that there was some tension between the two, even before the robbery, stemming from some issues about the song they released together. So his posts could have had the motive of staining Drake's reputation. And some people believe Drake simply told police what occurred during the robbery, and didn't really give specific details.
The man's track and made a solo remix. That's
obviously
tough.
Drake
Drake's
denied all the allegations thrown at him by Big Page and any others, claiming the outcome of the trial proved he didn't snitch. A lawyer that was close to the case claimed that Drake was not exactly forthcoming with police, and at some point, he actually stopped cooperating. From there, things went downhill, as far as getting charges to stick against the two men. The big charges were leaning on the statements and testimonies of the victim, Drake, and without him, there really wasn't much to go off of. The witness at the scene, Nicholas, who yelled at the perps, and was also listed on the document, didn't seem to provide a strong enough statement to have an effect in court. And there's no information if Chantal, the passenger, was even involved in court or any part of the legal fallout. Overall, it looks like Drake analyzed the situation from a business perspective and decided that working with authorities wasn't the best move for his rap career. This decision to follow the street code of no snitching worked out well in the long run for the accused men. By January 2010, about half a year after the arrest, the heaviest charges against the two were withdrawn, although they both pled guilty to conspiracy to commit robbery and possession of stolen property. The judge sentenced them to time served plus 1 day, and they're released in the same month. Altogether, the pair ended up spending just over 6 months in jail. According to another lawyer in the process, Socrates was the alleged gunman, and Paul was the driver. The second gunman, the one who got away on foot, was apparently identified by name at some point, but was never arrested in relation to the incident. So years would go by, and Drake briefly reflected on what happened in various interviews, one of them being with BBC One Extra. On this radio show, Drake talks about the aftermath of the trial, and says that he's the one who made the decision to have them not put in jail, and ultimately, it was his choice to have the charges withdrawn.
That happened to me in Toronto, an altercation that had happened, and the way I chose to deal with it was walk away from it. I had a situation happen to me where I was approached by two men and, robbed, and I made the decision to not put those guys away, to not go to trial,
As to whether or not he actually snitched at some point, well, there's no public record that proves he did. The only remote evidence there is the paperwork that Big Page posted, and it really only states that Drake was the victim of a crime committed by the accused individuals, and not much else. So the idea of him being a snitch is still up for debate until actual solid proof comes to the surface.
Bro.
There's also the question of how exactly he ended up being robbed, and how the suspects knew where he was. While in another interview, Drake claims that he's sure the robbery was orchestrated by his date that night, Chantal. Not only does he mention it in interviews, but he also brings it up in his track, The Resistance, rapping about how he was part of a stick-up, and a girl he thought he trusted set the whole thing up. He also believes it was a planned setup, because his chain was hidden under his hoodie and jacket the whole time. Yet during the robbery, the gunman specifically asked for it. Drake claimed another sign was the fact that Chantal's purse was left untouched during the entire robbery, hinting that she may have had something to do with it. It's not known if anything happened to her afterwards, but I'm guessing that her and Drake no longer see each other. That brings us to the final question. Who were these people that robbed Drake? Their names are known to the public, but still, there isn't much information about them online. After researching both of the men, Paul led a tweet, and Socrates Cotterill, I wasn't able to come up with anything, not even their age. I was curious if the men were part of any gangs, or if they were possibly connected to Chantal Brown. My investigation came up short. Basically ghosts on the internet. On the Torontology Reddit, there was a thread suggesting that the third suspect who got away was actually the now deceased rapper Sizzlack, but of course this is just a rumor, or as this user calls it, a hood legend story. A few others replied on the thread, saying it was actually someone from Bleecker Street, but again, it's just hearsay. In the end though, it at least looks like Drake pulled something positive out of the situation, and treated it as a life lesson. He made a reference to it as recently as May of this year, on his track, From Florida with Love. He talks about how the robbery made him realize that there's no point in talking tough, and said that nothing like that has happened since that day. He also claims that now, he never touches the road without a plug, which we can assume means a weapon or security. In an older interview with MTV, Drake said that after what happened, he vowed to steer clear of the negative energy that sometimes surrounds the rap world. With his recent experience, along with even more notoriety, he realized it was time to invest in security and protection. So we're now brought to the present day again. As Drake boasts about in his song, he hasn't really been the victim of any armed robberies or similar crimes since. Nowadays, anywhere Drake goes in the world, he has an expensive fleet of security with him. And when he's in Toronto, he not only has his hired professional security, but he's also backed by a few gangs in the city too. He came to realize that just because he's from Toronto, doesn't mean everybody in the city is going to be a fan, and some might see him as a target. But to get to Drake for a handshake seems like it would be mission impossible, let alone to be able to rob him or try to harm him. Drake has become basically untouchable, and as a globally known celebrity, that's how it should be. If you have the money for security, why not?
For sure. Nobody's touching Drake anytime soon. Drake would have to be super lacking with a biddy to get touched. That's the only way. He would have to, like, his baby mom, so, like, I don't think he, like, will set him up like that, you feel me? And he probably with security with Twitter. Like, I don't see Drake going anywhere just with a bit, just to chill and link up. Can't. Nah, Drake, I wouldn't do it when he was with Serena Williams. He probably had security. That's how parallel the nigga was. Nigga was with J-Lo. Yeah, Drake can't hold down a good bit still, but Drake's a Toronto nigga. He just trying to go through them. You feel me? Alright, you guys already know what it is from the comment section. Tell me how you feel. If you're new to the channel, like, share, and subscribe. Hit me on the gram. If there's any requests on Instagram, hit me on there. If there's any video requests. Until next time. Deuces.
Got me like a rich bitch, limp dick, put it on your daughter and she still call it nut. Patty K, gotta know your bitch like Johnny K. ATL pull up in roller skates, or lights on like a library.